Hey everybody, I'm Ryan, this is Roll for Initiative, and on this episode I'm going to be teaching you how to paint Kyphrixis, the copper dragon from the Reaper Bones minis. Now this is his base, and you can see that I've already gone through and done my base coat of Karak Stone, that's the gray, and Tallarn Sand, that's the sort of brown. And I did a real quick dry brush with a white in order to pull out some highlights. And now what I'm doing is I'm taking Deathworld Forrest, and I am using a medium in this to sort of thin that out. And I'm laying in all the different spots where I'm going to later come back and put in some flocking, a couple different types of flocking, in order to put some moss and vegetation and lichen and all of that on these stones to really bring this base to life. I go through and I do use Nul Oil on the gray stones in order to give it its shadow and its depth, and I use Seraphim Sepia on the brown stones so that those look a little bit different. I like to have the lichen curl up around some of the rocks, the places where the rocks I think are getting some sun, but also protection from the dragon stomping around. I think about those types of things whenever I figure out, well, where do I want my flocking to go? But you're going to see this base again towards the end. Getting into the dragon proper, I've gone through and done a wash. I've done 2 washes of the dragon, just mixing about 50-50 a black with water. In order to give it a dark color to build my base off of, I think it helps give it some depth and all of that sort of stuff. Again, I'm using Citadel paints here, and my base is a brass scorpion. Now, I know he's a copper dragon, but I really like the warmth, the rosiness of the brass scorpion. I think it's going to give us some nice heat and something to build up. I'm also not using my medium here. With Citadel, the way the particulates look straight out of the pot, I like it, especially for a base. And so I'm not going to bother trying to thin that down with a medium. You can if you like. The medium definitely gives you a little bit more control of where you're putting your color. But again, since I'm only using this as a base, I don't feel I need the control that much. But I'm just going through and getting all of this in. It's a pretty quick, fast brush that I'm doing with this one. And this will get 2 coats. This will get 2 layers of this base before I move on, which is what I'm doing now. And again, we're bringing that good old Seraphim Sepia. And I'm using this in order to fill in the cracks and the crevices. Again, using it as a shade, a shadow, in order to give this a little bit more depth. Coming out of the pot over to my little palette over there, so that I'm not laying in too much color at any given time. And I'm not thinning this down yet. I think actually I might be thinning this down just a little, not quite halvesies. So here we have our Hashut Copper. We're going to start to get this brighter, more vibrant color in. And now I am thinning it out. I am using my medium from Liquitex, and I'm just laying this in. My shadow has dried very, very well, and I'm laying all of this in. I'm going fairly quick, and you can already start to see the way that really pops, is really vibrant. And the medium is helping with that as well. It's giving me a little bit more control. Now that medium is going to mean that you're going to need a longer time between to let everything dry. And once that's done, I'm going in and going ahead and getting the eyes done. So just using a nice vivid white. I think the white that I use is usually from Vallejo. I like the way that it works a little bit better for eyes than I do the Citadel. Laying in a nice bright vibrant green for the iris, and then the Abaddon black for the pupil. And I'm trying to pull this as a dot sort of towards the center, front of center, so that he's looking forward. And then I'm just very carefully pulling that dot up and down to create that sort of nice shape, a little bit of an ovoid shape there with the green. Then the black goes in and a couple of double highlight marks. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of dry brushing here. I've got my paint a good shake, and now we're looking at Auric Armor Gold. And I'm pulling this through, really trying to dry brush. I'm going back over to my palette over there to really try to let it get fairly thin. I'm just brushing those particulates across. And I'm doing it on the ridges, on all of the places where I really want the scales to pop. The membrane isn't really going to be getting this. And his belly doesn't get it quite as much. Now his chest does, because he's reared up the way he positions himself on that rock. But I'm going through, and this Auric Armor Gold gives a really nice pop. And then the last thing that you'll see me be doing here is using my Sigmarite. Now this is a dry, and I'm using a really fluffy dry brush to this. It's a dry paint, and I'm just hitting the places where the sun is going to be reflecting off of these scales. I did a nice little dry fit to see where I want all of that, and that lets that pop. Finally, I'm using a screaming skull for the talons and the teeth and the ridges and those different sorts of things. I will thin this down so that it doesn't come up a little too clumpy. A couple of different coats of screaming skull. And then we'll knock down the vividness, the vibrancy of that, again with our Seraphim Sepia in just a moment, to give them a little bit of a worn appearance, aged appearance. It'll tie back in with the warmer colors of the scales. Something to keep in mind when you do teeth, that don't just do the outside of the teeth. Move your model around and get the sides and fronts and back of the teeth as well, so that as your players look at it, as you see it from different angles, you see all of the color that should be there. When you get into the cracks and crevices, he doesn't have metal teeth. So here it is. This is the really fun color, Nihilakh Oxide. This is what's going to give you that tarnish, that verdigris, that copper and brass tend to get. Now I'm working with this first. I've got a really fine brush. Everything has dried for a day. The lighting changed, new shirt. But I'm laying this in with a very fine brush, and I'm doing it right out of the pot. And I'm being really careful. What I'm trying to do here is find all of the places where I think that water and moisture will have collected, and that Kyphrixis hasn't had as much time to clean. And so where are the places that this tarnish is going to happen? And a quick indicator of where you might want to be laying this tarnish is where that shadow, that sepia that we laid in earlier, well, where does that pool? And then you can go through and put in this straight from the pot oxide. Now it's going to dry a lot more vibrant, so don't worry about it looking perfect here. And we're actually going to do this in multiple stages where we thin it out and feather it out. But I'm getting this in behind all of the scales, especially these larger ones. and you can already start to see where it's showing up and really starting to pop. Now, the front of his muzzle, the tips of his wings, places where I think he was able to sort of dry himself off a little bit better, flap his wings, wash his face, all that kind of stuff. I'm not really laying any in there because I do want there to be some shining bits. I want there to be some nice spots where you can sort of appreciate the majesty of the dragon, but also appreciate some of the work that's gone into it. That's why I'm laying it in here. Basically where you would see shadow is where I'm going to put this oxide. Now I'm getting in here between where his wings are going to fold up and we've got these higher ridges. And you can see I'm pulling a lot more of the oxide up onto the scales. And even where, and this dries pretty quickly, even where it's dried, you can see just how much it changes. It knocks down the shine, it dulls things out a little bit, and it gives us this really beautiful verdigris color that's going to happen. And I'm laying it in a little bit heavier, a little bit thicker here, because I sort of just think that the way that the miniature sits, it looks like a good spot for moisture to collect. I'm just turning him around a lot, trying to follow the natural line of the creature's body. I keep in mind a little bit, well, maybe how does he stand or sit when he's not posed up on his rocks, but laying in more of that. As I switch to the wings here, I've got a larger brush. I'm laying this patina in around the fingers and then fanning outward, dabbing my brush off. And you'll see that I take a rag and try to rub out some of the different patina. I want to create those places where the metal has been moving and rubbing up against things, and we still get a nice little bit of shine, add some character, some depth, so that the patina isn't uniform the whole way through. And there you have Kyphrixis, the copper dragon. I hope that you learned something about how to paint with your metallics and laying in that verdigris, that tarnish for your copper. He should be someone really great for your players to run into. Thanks everybody. I really appreciate all of the things that you come here and that you say, and you're the reasons why we keep making these. I want to say a huge thanks to all of our Patreon patrons, and if you want to hop over to patreon.com/rollforinitiative and maybe join in on our campaign, that would be really awesome of you. Don't forget to like and to share and subscribe. Leave us some comments, and we will see you every Tuesday and Thursday for a new video. I'm Ryan, and this has been Roll for Initiative.